Then we have Damien Hist. Now we're jumping way ahead. We are dealing with a present-day artist, still very relevant, still creating pieces, some major shows still going on. Now, Damien Hirst's wide-ranging practice, he does installations, sculpture, painting, and drawing, has sought to challenge the boundaries between art, science, and pop culture. His energy and inventiveness and his consistently visceral, visually arresting work has made him a leading artist of his generation. Well, what he does is he's exploring the uncertainty of the human experience, focusing on ideas of love, life, death, loyalty, and betrayal through unexpected and unconventional media. He's equally known for his paintings. These include his butterfly paintings that consist of actual butterflies suspended in paint or thousands of butterfly wings arranged in a pattern on a canvas. In 2007, he unveiled arguably his most provocative work, For the Love of God, but you're going to have to wait on that until we get to it. We're actually going to start with Mother and Child Divided. This isn't necessarily the best slide for it, but it gives you an idea of what you're looking at. Mother and Child Divided is a floor-based sculpture consisting of 4 glass-walled tanks containing the 2 halves of a cow and calf, each bisected and preserved in formaldehyde. My first question to you is, who made it? When you think about it, art traditionally is made, or at least some major element of it, is made by the artist. Now, you could argue that even back in the Renaissance, there were workshops, and so the Sistine Chapel ceiling, large portions of it were not done by Michelangelo. But even if he did 10 or 20% of it, that's still a massive undertaking. And we still look at him and say, well, he's the master, he came up with the design, there's a lot of ideas there. But when we look at Hirst, we go, well, he didn't put the cows in the tank, he didn't glue them to the side, and he hopefully wasn't running through a pasture with some kind of chainsaw going, "Here, Bessie!" Bzzz, chasing this cow down and cutting it in half. Presumably, that's not what's happening. And yet, when Hirst comes up with the idea for the piece and then hires experts to do it, we sit there and we look at it and we go, wow, there's a problem there. The artist should be creating the piece. And yet, when Michelangelo is creating his works, which are not entirely his own, he's working with a workshop like so many other Renaissance artists, we don't bat an eye. Kind of interesting. But you have to remember, when we're looking at art, especially so recently, I mean, this is art of 30 years ago. So when we're looking at very recent art, it hasn't gone through the filter of time yet. Time has not filtered out all the stuff that will be forgotten. That takes 100 years or more. So when we look back at the Renaissance and we go, well, they created good art or they created good music. Well, the only art or music that's coming to us from that period has passed through that great filter of time. Imagine the millions of pieces that didn't. Whereas when we get up into the present, we're faced with a conundrum where we don't have the filter of time, so we have to filter it ourselves. It gives us more work, and we don't like that. But back to Mother and Child Divided. The tanks are installed in pairs, the 2 halves of the calf in front of the 2 halves of the mother, with space in between that you can walk between them and view the animal's insides. And oftentimes people say, this is horrible, this is savage. But is it? I mean, think about it for a moment. When you go to Pick and Save, or you go to Kroger, wherever local grocery store you go to, you don't walk through the meat department going, "Ugh! Chicken!" It's the same thing, isn't it? And we're not being asked to eat the cow. We're being asked to look at the cow. And we find this disgusting, and yet the ground beef or the chicken, which is mostly whole, Or the fish, which might be whole with its head and tail on, that doesn't disgust us. I mean, maybe it does for some people, but it doesn't disgust most people, and yet this does. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why does it disgust me when I see a cow cut in half in a gallery? Is it maybe just the context? You don't expect to get an anatomy lesson at an art museum, but maybe if you were at a natural history museum, you'd be perfectly fine with a T-Rex that's been cut in half so that you can see what its organs look like. Thick white frames surround and support the tanks, set in brilliant relief to the transparent turquoise of the formaldehyde. And there's a reason for this. To Hirst, to make this something that belongs in a gallery, it needs a frame. Just imagine when you were a kid. If your mom liked your work, she put it on the fridge. If she really liked the work, it got put in a frame and it hung near the stairway or wherever. A frame really kind of makes a finished piece of art, at least in our minds. That's what we're told. So Hirst puts this white frame around it that really gets at this idea of, is it really art? If I, run out now and find a squirrel and cut it in half and shove it in a formaldehyde tank, is it art? Or does it become art when I put a frame on it? Or does it become art when it's in the right gallery? If I put it in a gallery that I own, does it have the same impact? Is it still art compared to, the Tate Modern, this great National Gallery of England that will show this piece? This sculpture is actually created for the exhibition at the 1993 Venice Biennial and was subsequently the focus of an exhibit, the focal point of the 1995 Turner Prize at the Tate in England. So it's now gone through another issue. So this piece is in a in a museum collection in Oslo. Hirst created the Tate's copy for exhibition in the Turner Prize in 2007 for a retrospective. So not only do we have the problem of, is it art? We've got a cow cut in half, etc., etc., etc. But do I get to replace the cow? If the cow starts to rot, can I simply get another cow and cut it in half? This is the calf. If the calf starts to rot, can I do the same thing? Can I create multiples? Can I just open up a butchery shop and freeze a whole bunch of cattle and just start cutting them in half? I mean, what level does this go from, yep, that's art, to, that's serial killer-ish? So all of these questions should be running through your mind as you look at this piece, as you're probably running away, pondering why in the world we're looking at what appears to be an anatomy lesson in the middle of an art history class. But suddenly I have a hankering for a hamburger, so I'll be back in a minute.